We're ready to start now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to the meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committees. I'd like to remind everybody this meeting is being streamed live on our website and being recorded. Remote meetings are something quite new to us. Their unfamiliarity and the need to get used to their technical operation means they're unlikely to go as smoothly as meetings held in person. So I hope everyone observing will bear with us. To help us, councillors have been given guidance on the conduct of remote meetings. I'd just like to emphasise a few of its points. Hopefully, members of the committee are taking part from a place where they will not be disturbed or distracted. When they are not actively participating in the meeting, I would ask members and officers to keep their audio and video off. Anyone wishing to speak should type in H in the chat box and I'll call them when it's their turn to speak. All questions and contributions must come through the chair, and please remember to turn on your video and audio when I call you to speak. Any councillor with an interest in any item should declare it and keep their audio and video off when it's being considered. They will not be included in any vote on the subject. When it comes to a decision on any of the recommendations or motions before us, I will assume that if no one says they oppose them, everyone will be in agreement. If anyone says they are opposed, I'll ask for a formal vote to be conducted. If we lose the live stream on the website, I'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and hopefully the problem can be fixed. If it cannot, I'll adjourn the meeting until a future date. Hopefully that won't happen. Apologies for absence. Have we any, please, Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from councillors Ambor, Frascona and Knight. The councillors we've got attending this evening are obviously yourself as Chair. We have Councillor Ashley, Clark, Hughes, John, Jones, Lee, Rajesh and Roberts. The officers attending, I'm here from Democratic Services, Victoria Marsh is from Legal, and we have Paul Brooks and Nigel Dermott from Licensing. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned before, declarations of interest. All members are reminded they must disclose any interest they know they have in items of business on the meeting's agenda, and they must do so at this point on the agenda or as soon as they become aware of the interest. If the interest is a disclosable pecuniary interest, they are obliged to notify the monitoring officer within 28 days of the meeting. Item 3 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July 2020. Does everybody agree that they are a true representation? Don't all say yes, but just say no if you disagree. Okay, thank you very much. We'll take those as read. Item 4, public question time. I understand there aren't any public questions. Can you confirm that, please, Daniel?
Yeah, that's correct. None have come in.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 5.5, which is the yearly review of the statement of licensing policy. I understand Nigel Dermott is going to present that item.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm presenting this statement of licensing policy following the consultation. The purpose of this policy the purpose of the report is to ask members to consider the attached draft statement of licensing policy, which I'll refer to generally as the policy, as required under the Licensing Act of 2003, following formal consultation. Having provisionally approved the policy at a previous meeting on the 9th of July 2020, members are asked to consider the only response, that's one and only response that we received following widely shared consultation, and consider whether you feel it necessary to make any addition, alteration or amendment to the policy with a view to its presentation at the next Cabinet meeting. In order to maintain its authority, the licensing authority must revise its statement of licensing policy every 5 years under Section 5 of the Licensing Act 2003. Our current policy is due for formal revision and publication in January 2021, and a proposed draft policy was approved by this committee on the 9th of July 2020 to enable wider consultation. The policy was subsequently consulted on with the responsible authorities and other local stakeholders, including the wider community via our website, a local paper, and in our main civic reception. We thank our street pastors who provide excellent support and have considerable experience in looking after the welfare of those making use of our services within the nighttime economy. They were the only group who offered any suggestion by way of addition to the policy, and their wording was they would like to see added there should be strict adherence to COVID-19 regulations or guidelines in and around venues. Whilst the ongoing pandemic is clearly of concern to all of us, this is an ever-changing landscape that is covered under regulations and government guidance requiring risk assessments by licence holders that is monitored by other local authority services and under different regimes. Licensing policy should not concern itself with matters covered under separate requirements or legislation. I'm privy to share an experience up and down the country with my peers, and the general view is that COVID-19 has not been fully established as an issue that is directly connected with the intentions of the licensing objectives. Those objectives being the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, prevention of harm to children, and public safety. Excuse me. Attached to Appendix A is a copy of that statement of licensing policy, and as it currently stands, it's unamended as it was consulted upon. Members are asked to consider their views on the matter raised by our street pastors and asked to consider any amendment or recommending the policy as it currently stands and present it at the next Cabinet meeting as the formally adopted policy for Chelmsford City Council for the following 5 years as of January 2021. Chair, I'll leave the rest of the comment to yourselves.
Thank you so much, Nigel. Thank you. I would like to, at this point, thank the street pastors as well for the fantastic work they do, helping to keep Chelmsford safe, working with our licensing officers and others who are out on the streets. I welcome their comments. I'll be interested to hear what the committee's got to say, but I would like to propose that we add their comments. I know it's an unusual situation, COVID-19, but I feel quite strongly that the COVID-19 situation comes under D, public safety, of the licensing objectives. But I would be interested to hear views of other members of the committee, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. No? Would you be happy to add, as I've suggested, or rather, is there anybody who doesn't agree that we should add in the sentence from the street pastors, which is there should be strict, I can't read it now, there should be strict adherence to COVID-19 regulations, guidelines in and around the venues under public safety. Does anyone disagree with adding that? Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, right, so we move on to 6, urgent business. Can you confirm there isn't any urgent business, please?
Yeah, we haven't received any.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, that concludes this part of the licensing meeting. We will reconvene at 7:15 for our regulatory meeting. Thank you.
We can start the next meeting now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the meeting of the Regulatory Committee. It will be the same apologies for absence as before. The minutes are slightly different because we'd split the meeting before anyway. So again, consider the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July. I'm happy with the content of those. If anybody isn't, if you could speak now. Thank you. Again, the declaration of interest, all members are reminded they must disclose any interest they know they have in items of business on the meeting's agenda, and they must do so at the point of the agenda or as soon as they become aware of the interest. If the interest is a disclosable pecuniary interest, they are also obliged to notify the monitoring officer within 28 days of the meeting. Public question time, again, I understand we haven't got any public questions. Could you confirm, please?
Yeah, that's correct.
Lovely. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 5, which is the application for an increase in the fares charged by Hackney carriage vehicles. Are you presenting this, Nigel? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was struggling with my IT again, as usual. Thank you very much. This is the second time we've heard an application for an increase in the fares charged by Hackney carriage vehicles. The purpose of the meeting is to further consider a request submitted by Mr. Terry Michel, who's a licence holder. Unfortunately, he gives his apologies for absence at this meeting, and that was for an increase in the Hackney carriage fares following consultation, and during that consultation we had only 3 responses. That was widely consulted on in the papers, on our website, and amongst all of the Hackney carriage licence holders. It's recommended that the decision of the Regulatory Committee on the 9th of July to support the proposed tariff being reviewed in the light of the 3 responses that were received during the 14-day public consultation period, which ended on the 30th of July, which followed that decision made earlier by this committee, and those recommendations were either to make a further decision as to whether to implement those charges or not. If the decision remains to support of those increases, to direct officers to make those arrangements to implement as soon as it's possible in a manner that's safe to do so whilst the current risks posed by the pandemic remain. At a meeting of the Regulatory Committee on the 9th of July, it was decided to support a motion proposed by Mr. Terry Michel to increase the tariff charges for hire of Hackney carriages as presented at that meeting. Following that decision to support the proposals, officers have consulted widely with licence holders, posted the details, as I've said, in the most appropriate local newspaper and on the Chelmsford City website, as well as publicly available in the main reception of the civic offices. At the conclusion of that consultation period, officers have received only 3 responses, 2 from taxi drivers agreeing with the increase and 1 against. Whilst those who agree have added nothing further, other than the fact that they agreed to the increase, the licence holder and contributor to the consultation who disagreed stated reasons. I've given you a copy of that email response attached as Appendix A for you to read. It's a very short issue there. Mr. Michel isn't here able to make any comment about that, but just to remind you, a tariff 2, which is what the person making a minor objection to, tariff 2 refers basically to the tariff charges that are made after 11 o'clock before 6 o'clock the following morning and at any time on a public holiday. And actually the difference between working during the day and working at that time of the day and on a bank holiday is £1.20, and that's on the startup tariff. So therefore the options for members, they are invited to read that response and are advised that the following options are available to you: to dismiss the petition in the light of that representation made against the decision to increase tariffs, to modify the proposal to the extent that the representation might be mitigated, to continue to support the position as previously agreed by the committee. Madam Chair, over to you.
Thank you so much. Just to confirm that approximately 207 licensed drivers were actually consulted on this. So with only 3 responses, that isn't massive, but actually 1 against, I think means that by default, most of them are very happy with this. I would like to suggest that we continue to support the petition as previously agreed by the committee, but I'm happy to hear any other views, or has anybody got any other opinions or questions they'd like to ask? Okay, thank you so much then. So could I just ask, please, Nigel, what timescale are you looking at for implementing this?
Not wishing to assume your decision this evening, Chair, I have already provisionally made arrangements for the 30th of September, which is within the 2-month timescale as advised by our legal representative here this evening. It's necessary to take that length of time, mainly because of the COVID precautions that would need to be taken. They're not insurmountable, but just need a little bit of time just to make the arrangements to ensure everybody's safety on the day that we make those recalibrations.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, you wanted to ask a question.
Sorry, I put my H up quite late. Just a quick question on the consultation. I agree that 3 isn't a very high return, but yeah, how were the licence holders communicated to? Is it via letter or email? Thank you.
Councillor, the answer to that is they weren't done by letter, because at the time letters were quite difficult to send remotely. Most of us were working from home. Therefore, they were all contacted via the Chelmsford Taxi Association and via social media and other electronic means, directing them all to the consultation that was online on our website. There was quite a lot of communication that was going on social media, which I do monitor, a lot of it in favour, lots of comments about it, but at the end of the day, the formal representations that we've received are only the 3 that I put before you this evening.
Thank you, Nigel. So the committee is happy to continue to support the petition as previously agreed by the committee before. Moving on to item 6, I understand we haven't got any urgent business or exempt items. Can you confirm, please?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much all for your attendance. I hope you didn't travel too far this evening. And thank you so much and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.